Emily Parker had always been the kind of woman who blended into the noise of downtown Seattle, hardworking, quiet, and focused on her daily routine. That afternoon, however, nothing felt routine. She stepped out of the tall glass building, where she worked, breathing out the stress she had carried since morning. The air smelled like early autumn, the kind that hinted at rain but still held on to a bit of sunshine. She tightened her scarf, pushed her hair over her shoulder, and walked toward the parking lot, thinking only about getting home and resting her tired mind. As she walked, she heard footsteps behind her. Not rushing, not loud, just close enough to make her turn her head slightly. Then came a familiar voice calling her name, Emily. She stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, startled more by the soft urgency in the voice than the call itself. Before she could fully turn around, she felt a gentle tug at her hair. It wasn't harsh or painful, more like a small pull meant to get her attention. She froze for a second, her hand rising instinctively to her shoulder. When she turned, she saw Liam Hart standing behind her with a small, almost embarrassed smile. He was holding a single yellow leaf between his fingers, the leaf he had pulled from her hair. Emily felt her heart skip, not because of the tug, but because of who he was. Liam was the coworker everyone noticed, the one who stayed calm during chaos and carried a quiet confidence wherever he went. He wasn't loud or flashy, but something about him always drew attention, even when he didn't try. "There was a leaf stuck here," he said with a soft laugh, lifting the leaf in her direction. "I didn't want you to walk around with it." Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "Oh, thanks," she said, trying to hide how unexpectedly flustered she felt. It was such a small thing, yet her heartbeat reacted as though something bigger had happened. Liam stepped back a little, giving her space, but his eyes lingered on her with a gentleness she wasn't used to. Usually, he kept everything professional, passing by her desk with quick nods or short smiles. But right now, he looked at her like he wanted to say something more, something important, something personal. She waited for him to say it, but he didn't. Instead, he handed her the leaf, as if returning something meaningful. She took it without understanding why. The whole moment felt heavy in a strange, warm way. The noise of the city around them kept moving, cars passing, people talking. Distant horns yet, the space between them felt still, almost quiet. "You okay?" she asked, noticing a tension in his expression that didn't quite match the light tone he used. Liam nodded. But it wasn't a confident nod. "Yeah, just a long day." He paused, searching her face like he was trying to confirm something. "You heading home?" "Yeah," she said, unsure why her voice sounded softer than usual. "You, eventually," he said. "I just needed some air." Emily didn't know why, but she felt he was holding something back, something he wasn't ready to say. She waited again, hoping he would explain, but instead he stepped aside to let her pass. She walked forward, expecting the moment to fade quickly, but it didn't. If anything, it settled deeper inside her. As she reached her car, the small tug, the way he had said her name, the look in his eyes. None of it felt accidental. She put her keys in the ignition but didn't start the engine right away. For the first time in a long while, she sensed a shift, something new. Something she didn't know how to name. Liam was usually predictable, reliable, professional. But today felt different. She replayed his expression in her mind. There had been something behind his eyes, something almost vulnerable. The way he looked at her wasn't casual. It wasn't friendly in the usual way. It was warm, careful, and layered, with something she couldn't understand yet, but wanted to. That gentle pull kept echoing in her mind. There was something oddly intimate about it, though completely harmless. No one had touched her like that in a long time. Not with intention, not with genuine care. It wasn't romantic, not exactly. But it wasn't just friendly either. As the sky grew darker, she drove home, but her thoughts stayed tangled around that moment. She wondered why it felt like the start of something she didn't see coming. She wondered why Liam, of all people. had reached for her hair instead of just calling her name again, and then the question that truly made. Her unease settled into her chest. Why did that tiny moment feel like it meant more to him than he said? Didn't believe in signs, but the world had a way of nudging people when they least expected it. And today, a simple tug on her hair felt like the first nudge of something she had no control over. Something she wasn't sure she was ready for. Yet part of her wanted to explore. When she reached her apartment, she placed the yellow leaf on her coffee table without really knowing why. Maybe she kept it because it marked a moment that felt different from the rest of her day. Or maybe because it reminded her of the way Liam had looked at her, like she mattered in a way. He hadn't said out loud for the rest of the evening. She tried to distract herself with chores, cooking, anything, but her mind kept drifting back to him. That quick smile, the way his fingers brushed her hair, the subtle tension in his voice. She couldn't shake the feeling that he had wanted to say something more but held back. She didn't know that Liam went home that night feeling the same, pull, only stronger. Heavier and far more complicated than she could imagine. Know that for him, that small tug wasn't just about a leaf. It was about everything he had been trying to hide, and this was only the beginning. The days after the small moment on the sidewalk moved quickly. Yet every hour felt strangely heavier for Emily. She tried to focus on work, but her thoughts kept slipping back to Liam. His gentle pull on her hair, the way he looked at her, the unspoken meaning in his eyes, none of it would leave her mind. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't romantic in an obvious way, but it lingered like a quiet question she couldn't answer. Whenever she passed by his desk, she sensed something different. In him, too. He wasn't avoiding her, but he wasn't acting like his usual calm, easygoing self either. His glances were shorter, his smile softer. And sometimes he looked as if he wanted to say something but changed his mind at the last second. Every small interaction added a new layer of confusion that pulled her deeper into wondering what was truly happening between them. On Friday evening, the office felt unusually empty. Most employees had already left to begin their weekend. The sky outside the large windows carried a shade of gold sinking into gray, and the soft hum of computers filled the quiet space. Emily stayed late to finish a report, hoping the extra work would silence her thoughts. But even focusing on numbers and deadlines couldn't hide the strange flutter she felt whenever she heard footsteps outside her office door. She had just shut down her computer when she heard someone clear their throat behind her. When she turned, she found Liam leaning against the doorframe, hands in his pockets, looking more nervous than she had ever seen him. His shoulders looked tense, and his eyes kept shifting as though he was afraid of what he was about to say. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey," she replied, surprised to see him still in the building. "You're here late." "Yeah," he said with a small breath. "I needed to talk to you." Those words alone sent her heartbeat racing, but she tried to stay calm. "About what?" He stepped into her office, closing the door behind him, not fully shut, just enough to give them privacy without raising suspicion. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't joking. He looked like someone carrying something heavy he couldn't hold anymore. "I've been wanting to say this for a while," he began. His voice wasn't steady. It shook just enough to make Emily's stomach tighten. "But I didn't know." "How?" Emily waited, her breath caught somewhere between curiosity and fear. He ran his hand through his hair. A nervous habit she'd seen only a few times. "The truth is, I didn't pull your hair just because of the leaf." Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't move. "She didn't breathe," he continued. "I mean, the leaf was real, but that wasn't the only reason. I wanted a reason to be close to you, even if just for a moment." The room felt suddenly warmer, as though the air itself was reacting to his words. Emily's chest tightened with surprise, with something close to hope. But she stayed quiet, giving him space to speak. "I know it sounds strange," he said, "and I know it might make things awkward. But I've been trying to hold back how I feel for months." I didn't want to cross a line or make you uncomfortable. Just, he paused, swallowing hard. I care about you more than I should. The confession hit her like a sudden wave, unexpected, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore. She had imagined something like this in small daydreams she didn't dare admit to herself. But hearing him say it, hearing his voice tremble with honesty, it was different, deeper, real. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. No words felt right. No expression seemed enough. Liam let out a long breath, almost defeated. I didn't plan to say it today. But after Monday, after seeing your face when I pulled the leaf from your hair, I realized I couldn't just pretend anymore. Her heart ached not with sadness, but with the weight of everything he wasn't saying. Then he stepped closer, not too close, just enough that she could see the mix of fear and hope in his eyes. I'm sorry if this makes things complicated, he said softly. I don't want to lose the good thing we already have. I don't want to make your work life uncomfortable. Just couldn't keep it inside anymore. Emily finally found her voice. Liam. She began, but the rest of her sentence slipped. Away before she could finish it, he lifted his hand slightly, as if stopping her gently. You don't have to respond. Not now. I know this is a lot. I just wanted to be honest with you. His honest draw, trembling, brave left her speechless. She had never seen him like this. He always seemed so steady, so sure of himself. But right now, he looked vulnerable, like someone stepping into a place where he could either be accepted or hurt. Emily felt something warm and painful rise in her chest. She had always admired his calm nature, his quiet kindness, the way he looked at people with understanding rather than judgment. But she had never expected him to feel anything deeper for her. She had always assumed he kept his distance because he was uninterested or simply focused on his work. Now, the truth stood right in front of her, breathing, waiting, hoping. Before she could gather her thoughts enough to form a complete reply, Liam spoke again, this time so quietly she almost didn't catch it. There's something else, he said, looking down for a moment. Something I never told anyone here. Emily felt her stomach drop. His tone wasn't romantic now. It was serious, heavy. He looked back up and the emotion in his eyes startled her. It wasn't fear of rejection, it was fear of revealing. Something deeper, something that had shaped him in ways she didn't yet understand. Before anything else, he whispered, You should know why I've been so careful around you. Why I've kept my distance even when I didn't want to. Emily's breath caught again. The room felt still, silent. Waiting, Liam took a step back, as if giving himself space to say the words he had kept buried. He inhaled slowly, gathering courage. And then, with a voice filled with a truth he had been hiding for far too long, he began to speak, revealing something she never saw coming. Liam stood in front of Emily, trying to steady his breathing. He looked like someone who had been carrying a heavy truth for so long that saying it now felt both painful and necessary. Emily watched him closely, feeling her heart tighten with a strange mix of worry and understanding. She knew whatever he was about to share wasn't small, wasn't casual. It was something that had shaped him quietly behind the walls he never let anyone see. He finally sat down in the chair across from her desk, resting his hands together as if holding them still might keep him steady. 2 years ago, he began, his voice lower than before. I went through something difficult. I don't talk about it much, but it changed how I see everything, especially relationships. Emily didn't interrupt. She simply nodded, letting him know she was listening. I was with someone for a long time, he continued. We built plans together, future plans. It's the kind you dream about when you think you've found your person. Was going the right way, and then it wasn't. He paused, letting out a slow breath. The relationship ended suddenly. It felt like everything I believed about myself fell apart in the same week. The sadness in his voice wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, honest, and carried the weight of someone who had healed slowly but still felt the echo of the past. Emily felt her heart soften. She didn't know the details, but she understood the type of pain he was describing. The kind where something you trusted collapses. If you lose more than just a person, you lose your sense of direction. I spent a long time after that trying to rebuild myself, he said, trying to figure out who I was without that future. I promised myself I wouldn't fall for someone again until I was sure I was ready, until I was steady enough not to hurt them or myself. His eyes held a fragility she had never seen in him before then. You came along. Emily's breath caught. She felt warmth spread across her chest, not from romance, but from the unexpected weight of his sincerity. You were just. You, he said simply, kind, focused, strong, in the quiet ways that matter. And the more I worked with you, the more I wanted to be around you. A faint smile touched his lips, quick but meaningful. It scared me, because I wasn't supposed to feel anything yet. I promised myself I wouldn't. Emily shifted slightly, her heart beating faster. She understood now why he always kept a polite distance, why he seemed warm but never stepped too close. He wasn't avoiding her because he didn't care. He was avoiding her because he cared too much, Liam continued. Every time we talked, every small moment we had, I felt something growing, but I kept reminding myself that I needed to be better, more healed, more ready. I didn't want to rush into something with anyone, not even with someone who made me feel alive again. He looked down at his hands, his voice softening. So I tried to stay calm, professional, friendly. But inside, every time you smiled or laughed or even said my name, I felt something I couldn't ignore. Emily felt her eyes sting, but she blinked away the emotion. She didn't want him to feel sorry for opening up. She didn't want him to hold back now. Then Monday happened, he said, lifting his eyes back to hers. That leaf, that small moment. Sounds silly, but when I saw it in your hair, I acted without thinking. I reached for you because I wanted to. He laughed lightly, almost embarrassed. And afterward, when you turned around and looked at me the way you did, it shook me. Because for the first time in 2 years, I felt something real and immediate, something I didn't want to run from. Emily remembered the moment clearly, the gentle tug, the warmth in his eyes, the silence that felt too meaningful for something so small. Liam took another breath. I didn't tell you this to make you feel responsible for anything. I just wanted you to know why I've been so careful, why I hesitated even when I felt something strong. I was healing, and you were part of that healing without even knowing it. Its words settled into her chest like a soft weight. They were warm, heavy, and full of truth. She felt something unfold inside her, an understanding she hadn't reached before. She saw him not just as the calm, dependable coworker, but as a person who had fought quietly through his own storms. You didn't have to tell me all this, she said gently. I know, he replied, forcing a small smile. But I wanted to. Because if I'm going to be honest about how I feel, you deserve the whole truth, not just the good parts. Emily leaned back slightly, processing everything he had said. The office felt even quieter now, as if the world outside had paused to let them exist in this moment without interruption. She wanted to say something comforting, something that eased the worry she still saw in his eyes. But before she could speak, footsteps echoed faintly in the hallway. Someone called her name from outside, breaking the fragile silence between them. She turned slightly toward the door, then back to Liam. Their eyes locked for a brief moment. One, filled with emotions neither of them knew how to describe yet. I should let you go, he said softly. You have someone waiting? But his voice held something else too. Something like hope. Something like fear. Something like he was waiting for her reaction, even if he tried to hide it. Emily moved toward the door, her heart pounding in a way she couldn't explain. She paused, looking at him one last time before stepping out. Liam, thank you for trusting me, she said, the only thing she could say without her emotions spilling over. He nodded. giving her a small, grateful smile that almost broke her heart with its softness. And as she walked away, she knew something had changed, something important, something she couldn't ignore any longer. She didn't know what would happen next. But she knew this Liam's past wasn't the only thing. He had revealed he had quietly opened the door to something new between them. Something fragile, something hopeful, something real. Monday morning came quietly, with the soft drizzle typical of Seattle's early winter. Emily felt a nervous flutter in her stomach as she walked into the office. The past few days had been heavy with thoughts of Liam and the truths he had shared. She didn't know how to act around him now, whether to pretend everything was normal or to acknowledge the unspoken connection that had started to grow. She hoped he would come to her desk or at least catch her glance, but the morning hours passed without a word. He was nowhere in sight. Her thoughts spun. Did he regret telling her everything? Was he avoiding her because he realized he'd crossed a line? Every scenario played in her head, each more unsettling than the last. She tried to focus on her work, but every spreadsheet and email blurred in her mind. She kept checking the doorway, hoping to see his familiar figure walk in, just like he always did by mid-afternoon. Emily's worry had turned into a knot of anticipation. She debated whether to send him a message, call him over lunch, or just wait. She decided on patience. She needed to see him in person. She wanted the honesty and clarity that only face-to-face words could provide. The clock ticked, and the office emptied gradually, leaving her desk in a quiet corner, with only the hum of computers and distant conversations. Then, finally, the moment came. The door opened, and Liam walked in. He looked tired but determined, as if he had spent the morning battling an internal storm just to reach this point. Spiked the slight slump in his shoulders, the dark circles under his eyes, and the quiet steadiness in his steps, all of it made Emily's heart ache. He wasn't avoiding her. He was coming, and every movement suggested he had something important to say. He stopped a few feet from her desk and met her eyes. That brief contact said more than words ever could: hesitation, hope, fear, and longing, all wrapped into one glance. Emily felt her pulse quicken. She stood, unsure whether to smile or remain serious. Her emotions were tangled, but the truth was clear. She wanted to hear him, wanted to understand what he felt next, and wanted to face it with him. I need to finish what I started," Liam said quietly, taking a careful step closer. Was no bravado in his tone, just honesty, just vulnerability. Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest. His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made her breath catch. He paused, searching her eyes for a reaction, then took another step. "I'm scared, Emily," he admitted, his voice low and earnest. "Scared of making a mistake. Scared of saying the wrong thing. Scared of losing the connection we have. But even with all that, I don't want to walk away. I don't want to hide what I feel anymore." Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She hadn't expected raw honesty like this, yet here it was, standing in front of her, waiting for her to respond. She swallowed hard, trying to gather the courage to meet his truth with her own. "I don't want you to walk away either," she said softly, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. She took a small step toward him. Her words weren't dramatic, but they carried the sincerity he needed to hear. The room seemed to shrink, the noise of the office fading into nothingness. Only the two of them existed in that quiet, fragile space. Liam's lips curved into a small, genuine smile, one that reached his eyes and softened the tension he had carried for days. Emily felt relief and warmth flood her chest. The fear and uncertainty that had hung between them all week began to melt away. This wasn't a sudden, reckless choice. It was a careful, deliberate, mutual decision to acknowledge something real. He exhaled slowly, finally allowing himself to relax just slightly. "Then let's take this slowly," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Step by step. Together. I don't want to rush. I don't want to force anything. Just want us to be honest with each other. Emily nodded. "I'd like that," she replied. Her voice trembled a little, but the words felt right. They were not dramatic or rushed. They were simple, honest, and full of unspoken emotion. For a few moments, they simply stood there, sharing a silence that was comfortable and electric at the same time. It wasn't about rushing into romance or declaring love in grand gestures. It was about being present, about acknowledging that something important had begun. Their eyes met repeatedly, a silent conversation passing between them. Each glance, each subtle smile, each small movement carried the weight of emotions. Neither dared fully speak aloud yet. Emily realized how much she had underestimated the quiet power of honesty. Liam had trusted her with his past, his fears, and his feelings. And now she understood that the connection they shared wasn't built on fleeting attraction or casual office camaraderie. It was something deeper, a foundation of respect, understanding, and vulnerability. Liam reached out, almost instinctively, but instead of touching her, he simply adjusted a strand of hair that had fallen forward. It was a small gesture, but to Emily, it spoke volumes. It said, "I see you. I notice you. I care about you." Emily felt her chest swell with emotion. She didn't need grand declarations or dramatic displays. This subtle, quiet moment was enough. It was enough to make her heart feel full, to make the fear of uncertainty fade, and to create a sense of hope for what was to come. "Thank you," she said softly, almost reverently, "for being honest, for trusting me." Liam nodded, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "Thank you for listening, for understanding, for being you." There was no rushing, no overwhelming passion, no need for dramatic gestures. Just two people standing in a quiet office, acknowledging the beginning of something meaningful. The world outside continued its routine, but inside that small space, something new had been born. Emily felt a quiet sense of peace settle over her. It was a peace she hadn't known she was searching for, but now that she had it, she didn't want to let it go. She realized that love, or the beginnings of it, didn't always arrive with fireworks or urgency. Sometimes it came in quiet, deliberate moments, the kind that left a lasting impression because they were real, unhurried, and shared honestly. Liam gave her one last small smile before stepping back slightly, giving them both room to breathe. Emily returned it with a smile of her own, feeling a connection that didn't need words to be understood. It wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of a journey. A journey built on honesty, trust, and the willingness to take steps together, no matter how uncertain the path might be. And in that quiet, rain-dappled office, Emily realized something profound sometimes. The most romantic moments aren't dramatic or grand. They're simply two hearts choosing to trust each other, choosing to face fear together, and choosing to see what might happen when they finally stop holding back. The afternoon sun peeked through the clouds, casting soft light across the office. Liam and Emily stood side by side, their connection unspoken but undeniable. Nothing had to be forced. Everything was beginning in its own time, in its own way, and that was enough. For both of them, it was clear. This was no fleeting attraction or casual office crush. This was something real, fragile, and hopeful. And for the first time in a long time, both of them felt like they could finally breathe freely, knowing they were no longer alone in their feelings. And just like that, a chapter closed softly, leaving room for the next one, a chapter filled with honesty, tenderness, and the quiet beginnings of love.